Welcome to this CG Pro and Impossible Objects webinar, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome Impossible Objects here today. We're going to be talking about an amazing project that they've worked on called Diablo, which is a pioneering project, all rendered within Unreal Engine. There's not too many of projects that can claim that. So yeah, very excited to have you guys here today and talk about that, your pioneering work in rendering final pixels in Unreal Engine and being on the bleeding edge of content creation. So here today we have Joe Sill and Luke Delamar. Welcome, guys. Great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Ed.
Hi, yeah,
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. So why don't you tell me a little bit before we're going to play a clip in a second. We're going to play the piece in a second, and then we'll have a conversation about it. But why don't you tell us a little bit first about you guys and about Impossible Objects and what you do?
Well, I mean, again, thanks, Ed, for having us. Myself and Luke, we represent a faction of Impossible Objects. We're a virtual production studio. We focus on primarily creating films, both original and branded, through the use of virtual production and all the many facets. We're students of virtual production, and we're very excited about all the different ways we can build new worlds and create exciting new ways to tell stories. And so we're the Diablo Immortal project was one exciting opportunity where we got to kind of dive into a branded piece that was a cinematic, video game cinematic that would have traditionally taken, a different path through lineage pipelines. We decided to use Unreal as our starting and finishing platform and see how far we could get. And we were just very excited about everything that it gave us, from the previz part of the process to the finishing and rendering out some lovely work out of it. So it's a little bit about us, and yeah, we're excited to be here. I don't know.
Yeah.
Leaving anything out?
No, you got through a whole bunch there. No, I mean, I think well said. I don't know any other kind of interest stuff you want us to talk about before we play it.
Sure. Yeah, maybe you can introduce yourselves and what you do personally.
Well, you
Joe.
go.
Yeah, I'm Joe Sill. I'm one of the founders here. I'm a director first and foremost, and was for this project. And
I'm Luke. I'm a virtual production supervisor here, and I'm also a cinematographer. So I'm kind of a blend of a few things. I've got a visual effects background, so I've kind of found a niche within virtual production where I kind of bring the best of both worlds and have a unique view as we kind of use all these new tools to help tell cool stories. So I served as the virtual production supervisor and the cinematographer on the Diablo spot.
Fantastic. Okay, well, then without further ado, let's watch the piece, and then we can continue having this conversation on the other side. So yeah, let's enjoy. Fantastic, bravo. I love watching it again. It really caught my eye, and that's why I wanted to bring you guys on to talk about it, because when I first saw it, I thought, wow, that was cool. But then when I saw the Unreal being attached to it, obviously caught my attention. And I figured there would be more previz, but then when I contacted you, you told me that actually it was rendered in Unreal Engine as well. And that really blew my mind, because as I said at the beginning, there aren't all that many projects that are doing final pixel, some more on LED walls, but this is clearly being rendered within the engine. So yeah, really, I just well done. I'm at tip of the hat from another visual effects artist, and yeah, tell me a little bit about. I guess let's start talking about what led you to think that it was possible to do it all in Unreal. Because there's it must have been some moment of like risk and.
I guess we did not think that it was not possible.
Right.
We definitely learned along the way, based on the excitement we had about how quickly and efficiently we could develop all our work in engine. That there were limitations that we had to work around, but what we gained in the process was still something we walked away being very, very happy with. So
yeah, did you start knowing that you were going to do the whole thing in Unreal Engine, or did you start thinking that maybe you would do some of it in traditional VFX, or like how much confidence did you have going into it you'd be able to do the whole thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think from the get-go, we were pretty convinced that we could take it through. It definitely wasn't a situation where previz just started to look good enough that we're like, oh, let's keep it here. We kind of committed early on, and had been doing a lot of R&D well beforehand, just to like ensure that the pipeline would kind of work through. Because this was in I think 4.25 at the time too.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna be sitting there thinking that it was in Unreal 5 or something, but it was 4.25.
Yeah.
And this was actually last year, right?
Correct. Yeah, we finished the piece in about August or September of last year.
Right. So you started doing some R&D before the piece, and that started to give you the confidence that you could pull this off totally in Unreal. There's quite a lot in there. There's obviously characters, there's effects, there's animation, there's I've got many questions about how much is live action and how much is full CG in terms of the environment as well. Yeah.
Everything. I mean, everything about building virtual environments very, very quickly got us very, very excited very early on. So that environment is a virtual one. That's a CG environment. Even the live action shot with the girl at the end, that was a live action hybrid shoot on a green screen. So that was the same virtual environment we used. And that was a big reason why we decided to build the environment virtually, was because these characters inherently were going to be in these Ant-Man style perspective placements within that room. So we decided it was going to be more effective to stay inside a virtual environment the entire time.
Got it. So can you tell us a little bit about how you approached the project, how you started, like from the pre-production phase and then into previz?
Well, for this project, we had a couple clients. We had Google and Blizzard. We worked with an advertising agency, Omelette, and we, as Impossible Objects, worked as the production company. We workshopped a script with Omelette as well as the clients before ever developing anything in the previz side of things. But once we aligned on a script, we got into the storyboards. Storyboards very quickly informed our virtual art department, our previz team. And from those initial storyboards, we very, very quickly developed a quick virtual environment that we stood up, a quick set of initial previz shots based on the storyboards, some very rough motion capture library-based versions of the characters, and we built out a previz. I don't know if you want to dive into that.
No, I mean, one cool thing was that the pre-production and previz kind of lined up right along with the early release of MetaHumans. So we actually like squeezed like the pre-release of MetaHumans into previz just so that we could kind of share that. And since I served as both the live action DP and the virtual cinematographer, we kind of used that, and it just really helped inform the look really early on.
When we had a first cut of the previz, and that was not so dissimilar to the final piece that we see here. We had shared it with our agency and our clients, and typically previz is nobody's a stranger to previz, but I think everybody was very shocked to see all the color, the initial light impressions, or lighting design. Seeing an initial stood up virtual environment, people were like, holy shit, we can actually see the film. What do we have to do left? And we were like, well, there's a lot left to do, but it's exciting because we got to start with a ball of clay that was much, much more fleshed out. And there was a lot more detail and, a lot actual texture and color to witness and respond to.
Right, so more than kind of typical previs that people might be familiar with gray stuff in Maya and having to render that out and do a cut, and this was a different experience.
Totally.
Yeah.
And had you done something like this before, like a full CG photoreal piece in the game engine?
We've done iterations. I think leading up to this project, we had done a spot for Western Digital. We had done a spot for some of the folks at Honda Jet. Just starting to slowly introduce a CG project built in Unreal to some brands and some clients. This was definitely at the time the most grand scale project, and it was. Yeah. It was exciting as well as daunting. Obviously, we had a client that has had a history in gaming. So I think we had some of their eyes on the project the entire time. And so I think they were also wanting to see how far we would get with the project. They had provided some character assets, and we had to both up-res them from gameplay models. So we had character artists scale them up, but then optimize them so they could still perform in Unreal. So it was daunting, but it was exciting.
I bet. Yeah. What was it like mentioned briefly the client experience of them being really kind of shocked that it looked as good as it did early on? How did that help the process, relative to some of the things you might have worked on before with traditional offline visual effects and that kind of workflow?
Well, I think it leveled the conversations and the communication. I think it brought everybody together much more quickly. There was a lot less, the information gap was a lot less. I think what was left up to one's imagination. I think, it's our job to try and communicate the vision as effectively as possible, but oftentimes, what is communicated up front sets an expectation. So I think showing more of what we wanted or intended sooner allowed us to, drive the narrative and kind of make the conversation more and more finite as we went along, rather than expanding as we went along because there was less shown up front,
Right. So sounds like it helped remove assumptions and some of the things that you can typically get with staged pre-production and not showing as much early on. With clients can sometimes get concerned that you're going to get to the finish line, or like, what's it going to look like? They're getting further through the production schedule and starting to, that fear starting to come in. Did it kind of help to blast through that more than the typical process?
I think so. I think especially with things like the environment, being able to put that up so quickly, and that the previs environment was, very far along, so that, compared to play blasts and layout and, block out cubes and things like that, there really was very little left to the imagination. And so that just meant fewer surprises, like you said, fewer assumptions being made.
More intentional decisions to camera and lighting too. We were changing the light in the environment, where the sunlight was positioned. many, many times before we ever even got to set, where we would then shoot the talent. And that was really helpful. I think, some of the agency folks and the client folks got excited about, well, if we could, take this, I think it was the camera that was going down into the phone as we followed the two heroes kind of charging at the horde of the villains. That camera angle changed quite a few times because we got excited about, okay, what does a profile from like the table side look like? What does a camera that does do a little bit of this helicopter motion? And it just gave us a lot more room to communicate intentionally with everybody on the same page.
Right. Did it help you find more creatively through the process, as opposed to a lot of the time you doing pre-production, you kind of get stuck into that view of how it's going to be and locked into that throughout the rest of it? How did it change your ability to discover things throughout the production and be able to change things later into the production?
That's a good question. I mean, like one of the things that's kind of related to that is that we did some virtual cam stuff pretty early on, even with the CG portion. So not necessarily the live action at the end, but just to kind of get an idea of, what areas of this room looked good, things like that. So, I mean, the answer is absolutely it helped. At one point we did do a VR scout, just to kind of get a sense of the world, because I forgot what the final scale of the room is for when we're actually in the Ant-Man world, but it was a rather large scale thing. So just making sure that things still felt right. It was a lot easier to do that in Unreal.
Okay, so the room was actually not like real scale; it was larger than real scale.
Correct. Right. Yeah. So the room was built in real scale, and then so we have a version in Unreal with its true scale, and then a scaled version as well, kind of thing. So yeah, all the animation was still, those characters are 1-to-1 to real life. We didn't animate ant-sized characters, obviously. Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, because it's Unreal wants to work in a real world scale, which is more important for the localized action than it is for the room. So yeah, that makes sense. And you did some VR scouting. So what was that process like? Did you have the clients in that process? Was that more internal?
It's more of an internal thing. Yeah.
It was just fun for us to be able to take a physical camera rig. We come from a live action background with traditional visual effects experience and heavy projects that used heavy means of traditional compositing, visual effects. It was just fun using a physical camera rig and just finding things.
I think I remember justifying the time spent to do it because we had to have an optimized version of the environment for the hybrid portion of the shoot that ran at a decent frame rate so that we could do this up. And so we're optimizing this environment anyway, may as well optimize it and bake some lighting so that in VR it works, because obviously VR and the requirements for VR are drastically different than just looking at the viewport. So it was kind of like a trial as well while we were in pre-production. So
got it. Yeah, that makes sense. I know Jet is with a lot of that on some of the movies I've worked on. You need to make it run at frame rate. It's a higher resolution demand, but also you've got to try and not make people sick when you put them in VR. So just be a higher frame rate. Cool. So what did you use technology wise for the VR and the VCam?
So we have the VR was just a Vive Pro, I think, at the time. But our VCam, that is our own rig in house that we also take the system on set, is a vanishing point tracking system based. Right. If we're not using VR, like Vive pucks and things like that. So for internal like R&D, that's kind of how we do it. Until we, depending on the project, then obviously we kind of make a jump to an optical tracking system. But yeah.
So you're fans of the vanishing point system? I know I like that one too.
Yeah, I mean, for our own internal purposes, it's extremely helpful. It's extremely quick, very efficient. So just gets us a very quick and rough idea almost immediately, which was, helpful for us.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they have that cool registration system that doesn't require lengthy calibration and setup. And...
Yeah. No, absolutely. So it was the right tool for this job, kind of thing, especially with what we did in pre-production, but also in the hybrid live action portion. It made sense given what we were capturing. So
helped us for live camera tracking when we were on set, live green screen keying. It kind of simulated that virtual production aspect of seeing the virtual environment on our client monitors. So, and most of our client at the time were streaming from, most of them were, I think, on the East Coast, and so they got to get a live feed of that virtual environment that was tracked and keyed behind the talent, and just awesome, Yeah.
I think we did our best to not show anyone green. But all the monitors on set had the live comp.
Oh, cool. That's great. Yeah.
Exceptionally helpful.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people think about virtual production as all being LED walls, and it's really cool to hear from some examples of green, because there's things that you can't do on LED walls, and then a lot of people, what people want from it is to have the live component and get it in a in on the day, but also to get the feedback to see what it actually looks like. What kind of setup did you have on set to be able to look at it? Do you have some giant screens that had the comp on it?
Yeah, we have like a mobile, I don't want to say the word brain bar, but it's a little mobile brain bar card.
You said it anyway.
Yep. Everyone hates it. Yeah.
We're going to do a competition soon to rename the brain bar.
Yeah, I know. But yes, so, with two systems, because we're also obviously recording this and kind of treating it as post visualization too, and making sure that metadata holds up so that the editor worked with our live comp, so it kind of immediately.
Right.
But one thing I did want to mention too, because you said, oh, it's great to hear about green screen too. But since we do have experience with LED volumes, it was a consideration. But what was great about this project was that one of the reasons we chose to do it this way, aside from only a small portion of the shoot being live action like that, was we kind of did so intentionally so that we had room to kind of change art department down the line. So it's like, oh, this is what it's going to look like. We want to light it this way. The camera was done around that, but then there's flexibility later.
Right. I mean, everything was out of focus, but the client did have intent on having some Easter eggs in the background. So like even like the posters, like it'd be cool if we had like a Diablo themed poster or something that we could implement after the fact. So it gave us some control to make some adjustments to the environment after the fact that we wouldn't have if we were doing a volume shoot. Yeah, there are definitely some pros and cons to both directions, and I think it's just we've learned along the way through experience, which direction to take based on what the project is kind of asking for. Yeah.
Right. Well, I definitely want to talk about that a bit more. We have a couple of questions coming in from the audience because we're going live. So let me see if we've got any good ones here. So somebody's asking how you rendered the volumetrics
for all the magic and fire effects.
I guess so. Yeah, let's assume that.
Well, that was definitely one of the limitations we did find immediately. So in previz, we did use some real-time simulations to just get across the idea of the fire coming out of Diablo's mouth, or when the wizard hits the ground with her staff. Like, what does that effect feel like? We definitely wanted to make sure that the simulations were as good as humanly possible. So we still relied heavily on offline sims. We went into Houdini. We worked on some sims there. We worked heavily in comp to make sure that all the little details out of engine were perfect. So that was how we solved those particular moments in the film. So again, we recognized the limitations and we brought the best of both worlds together. And yeah, that was how we tackled that.
Yeah.
So the fire and stuff was actually rendered out of Houdini and Compton,
Correct.
but previz version being in real time.
Yeah,
Correct.
previz was all in
Yeah.
Niagara. It was kind of, it was definitely an informative effect, but it was like, I think pretty early, we knew from the get-go that, like Joe was saying, just to have the control was important. So.
Right. Well, it seems like they're making progress every time now. No, the Houdini, the Niagara fluids.
Oh yeah.
I've been tinkering with those. It's pretty crazy.
I hope everyone got the free Niagara thing this month, right? Everyone saw that.
The Fluid Ninja. Yeah.
Oh, Fluid Ninja.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time just playing in that.
I bet. Yeah.
Template.
I want to do that too. So well, that's the same question, I guess, volumetrics and fluids. We have another clip. We have some behind the scenes which I want to play through, and then we'll go through some more of these questions in a bit. But let's go to the BTS.
Cool. Here at Impossible Objects, we like to build worlds, and using the power of virtual production, we're able to do so in ways we've never been able to before, where we're able to bridge the gap from our imagination to final pixel image with realistic camera movement, light, and high-fidelity texture in real time.
Virtual production consists of a broad set of tools that allow filmmakers to work in a non-linear way. At its core, that just means that real-time creative decisions can be made in a CG-heavy world because you're looking at real-time virtual imagery and not waiting for the linear stages in a traditional VFX pipeline.
Epic Games and Unreal Engine have provided filmmakers the tools to really evolve our storytelling capabilities to be able to build larger photorealistic worlds and no longer rely on lineage pipelines or outdated live-action trade-off techniques in order to do so. For our film for Diablo Immortal, we needed to take key hero and villain characters from the game and pit them against each other on the surface of a Google Pixel, all while our live-action character witnesses this smaller-than-life battle take place from the real world. In order to pull this off, we decided to use Unreal Engine as the fulcrum between us building fully virtual environments, doing previs, hybrid live-action production, and animation. In previs, we were able to make so many more creative and intentional decisions because we were able to witness high-fidelity images in real time in a stage where we were traditionally used to looking at grayscale play blasts, storyboards, or relying on concept art. We needed to have the most efficient and powerful hardware out there to be able to sustain real-time performance. So we went to our partners at Dell and NVIDIA in search of the best possible tools available.
With our main workstation being a Dell Precision 7920 paired with an NVIDIA RTX A6000 GPU, this combo meant that we could throw anything at it and still have plenty of performance overhead for our real-time workflow. And the A6000's 48 gigs of VRAM is a crucial spec when offline rendering in Unreal down the line. Our image pipeline is something like this. Everything starts with Unreal Engine running our real-time environment. All of that is done on our Dell workstation with the A6000, and the I/O is handled by a Blackmagic designed Decklink card. On the live-action side, running in parallel, we shot on an Ursa Mini Pro G2, which has got great color science for visual effects workflows. That image is sent to an Ultimatte 12 for the live composite with the Unreal background. We then piped that through our DIT running DaVinci Resolve for some quick onset color, and then finally to Video Village, the director, the cam op, and then we record the dailies with the HyperDeck Studio so that editorial has post-viz ready to go.
This entire non-linear process helped enhance our live action process. We optimize our animation process and allows the artist the most flexibility to build the biggest world, to create a 1-to-1 ratio of what is in their heads and communicate that so effectively, more effectively than ever before. little product
Awesome.
in that.
Awesome commercials for several people there. No, really interesting to see the actual stuff that you used. It was, I think that we get a lot of questions as a school. What technology should we be using? There's obviously a lot of options, and there are different tracking systems, different hardware providers, different workstation integrators. But the fact that there's so much choice, I think, often is a bit overwhelming to people. I think it's really useful for people to be able to see what does it take to do something like this. I know we get a lot of people in who have lesser hardware and experience the edges of that very soon, and then find they need to upgrade the graphics card or the RAM or some component or other. So I think it was really interesting to see the hardware that it took. Also the full process you talked about, previz, about pre-production, previz, the shoot, the fact that you had some live edit and coloring, and I'd love to ask you a little bit about that side of it as well, about the edit portion. So you were shooting on a stage, and do you have an editor on the stage with you?
Less so for this project,
Yeah.
but actually the project that we're currently on, we had an editor on set. Was definitely working with all the real time shots and it was a green screen hybrid shoot as well. So there were some live camera comps that the editor was working with in tandem. What was interesting for the Diablo piece was the editorial was picture locked in previz, which was relieving and exciting. We got to go into the project out of previz within a couple weeks with a locked cut, and so we got to just identify all the shots and work with them more and more intimately, instead of continuing to edit while we were working on all the CG aspects. So
also it was 100% the same as the previz at the end.
It was a rare function that it was locked at that stage.
Right.
We have varying degrees of luck in that regard.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was curious about that, whether you had anything that you discovered through production, is people are confused of what to even refer to the different stages anymore, I think, working on this stuff. But so there was no reshoots as an example. Often people go into production and shoot and then find they have to reshoot something later on, but sounds like there was none of that.
Well, no, but what was actually, so we had to go back months later and reshoot for the Korean market, the talent at the end. So we have two different versions with two different talent, and the production shoots were several months apart, but it was exciting because we got to bring the same virtual environment to set, boot it up, same lighting, and really accomplish the exact same shot, which I think was only possible, or it was only as effective as it could have been by using this way of working.
Right, that makes sense. And I guess you had a practice run, but you also basically had the setup ready to load up again. And
yeah, didn't have to go build a whole set again.
Rent a home, get the art
Yeah.
department. Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of complexity sometimes with doing that localization stuff for different markets, and having to do lots of visual effects to comp things or paint things out that aren't appropriate in different areas. But with this, I guess you can just put different things in and re-render it, and makes that more straightforward.
It's definitely something we try to explain to folks, especially in the advertising world, that versioning is it is helpful to go this route for versioning, amongst many other more creative reasons.
Right. What was the rendering like for this? Because I think a lot of people are probably curious about it being a real-time renderer. I know that you can slow it down to increase quality and make it slower. What was the rendering process like for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, so obviously while we were working, we left the settings and we're working in a real-time environment. And when it came time for final deliverables, well, I'll back up actually. All of the previs and almost all of the even just like dailies that we were doing after locking previs, we would do quick renders. So it would be near real time, or we're definitely obviously using the movie render queue. And so it wasn't until kind of we reached a certain stage of where different things are locked that we kind of then go and treat it a little more like offline rendering. But it's the deferred render, it's the regular render, it's not path tracer. That's a question we get a lot.
Yeah.
So what this isn't, this wasn't like hours or overnights of renders. When I say offline renders, it was just not, 60 frames a second
Right.
thing.
Even if it's like 2 frames a second, it still beats like
exactly
20 hours a frame.
It was still rapid for us,
Yeah, which is great because since some of these things went through comp, it was very quick to spit out new passes or things like that. There was no issue of, we got to go back and render this again with an update. That was never a concern.
Right. Were you using passes?
AOVs? Yeah, so it was very early. It was like very early movie render queue, where luckily they did have stencil mats, the stencil pass. I think I forgot what it's called. So we were doing that, but I don't think there were any other passes that we did. It was pretty much Beauty Pass and the alphas that were needed.
Got it. Is that something, I know that you guys have clearly done a lot of things since this piece. Is that something you're digging into more now that more AOVs are possible in the render queue?
Oh yeah, a lot of what we do at Impossible Objects is also concerned with automotive and things like that, and kind of we're always just trying to push the fidelity of these renders. So we're absolutely making use of every feature that has been added, and path tracing too. We do a lot of work with path tracer, and we keep a very close eye on kind of how that's progressing as they keep adding features to it.
Still limitations, but depending on the project. We're even doing a project right now where there are some automotive sequences where path tracer doesn't make the most sense. So it's kind of a case by case.
Yeah.
And are you using 5 now?
Now we are, again, more pros and cons. Some things that are much better, and I've had less crashes. I think Luke has had more crashes since switching from 4 to 5, so I've been happy. But
some of the things what are some of the things that are not working as well, or maybe catching up with 5?
That's a good one.
I know there's like some of the settling of the light.
I guess more of a vague answer, but I remember when they released 427, which was like the last solid, like this is the release to use. There's some comfort in sticking with 427, especially with virtual production, because that was a very public move by Epic. Like this is our, this is it before Unreal 5. So leaving that was kind of difficult. But so far, it's been great, the jump to 5. So
it's helpful to bring higher poly, and work with bigger lighting setups.
Yeah, we're certainly making use of Lumen and Nanite now. I think we would have, had we done the Diablo spot in Unreal 5, the lighting would have been done entirely differently. So that's interesting to kind of think back and just think, not that long ago, we wouldn't have been able to do it this way.
Do you guys try and do all of your stuff in Unreal now, except for things where you have to back out into effects like we just discussed? Are you trying to do like as much of it as you can in Unreal before you find that you can't?
As much as humanly possible.
Yeah.
It just feels, I think, just like an exciting endeavor to explore and test out. We're even trying to see how far we can get with animation in Engine before having to kind of do some offline animation. And that's exciting. You know, I think like it just, the more we're able to witness in front of us in real time with color and light and texture, just, you know, simulates a lot more of I think the spontaneous creative impulse that you would get on live action production. And I think like to do that with more inherently imaginative concepts that CG heavy films would demand, I think is just, yeah, it's really exciting. So
it's great to hear. I think it's inspiring to people to hear that, because there's a lot of people from the old school, which is still necessary in a lot of cases, to use offline rendering. But I think it's really inspiring to see and hear that how much is possible, and you know, good for you guys for being on that bleeding edge. I think it's super cool. We have a couple more questions here that I want to bring up, and then I know we've got one more clip to show. So someone's asking, do you think that working in this way reduces the amount of redos or kickbacks from clients?
I think with the Diablo project, it absolutely did, because I think we aligned almost immediately on what the environment was supposed to look like, what the lighting could and should look like. So we were able to make fewer and quicker decisions up front, and then move away from that process, knowing that we had explored, you know, 3 different versions of where the sunlight could be within a couple, you know, days, rather than, you know, a much more lengthy process of revisiting lighting after the fact. I think there was always the freedom internally to revisit how we would light characters once we got into, you know, later stages where we had high fidelity characters. But I think calming everybody outside of the internal process, I think, made it so that we could move forward in sync. I think, especially when these types of projects can move forward where there's a lot left to the imagination, I think that can cause for fear-based communication. And so, you know, you can spin wheels based on somebody not being sure of what it will look like later down the line. And I think that is where inherently more and more redos happen. So I think we were, we were just happy and relieved. It was like a pretty surprisingly streamlined process, especially that was our most ambitious project at the time. I think having our client on our side up front, the trust was integral, and so that made us able to, you know, take you know, every stage that followed without unnecessary headaches.
Right. Did you have any sessions with the clients where you were like doing things in the engine whilst them being there, or them looking at you through Zoom or anything, like a kind of flame session in 3D type of thing?
We tried not to.
Okay.
And we didn't actually on this project, because I think for some reason, I think we did set an inherent tone of trust up front. So I think, you know, they were willing to, you know, not try to hop in engine and see what the lighting worked in actual real time with us. So
right.
that was nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like there's something that might be helpful further down the road when it gets easier to do that, to be able to like make those kind of changes dynamically, like you would in a flame session?
Yeah, I think it already is possible, and I think it just, and I think with these clients in particular, they were so trusting, but also so knowledgeable about visual effects in general and CG. So I think we would have felt very comfortable if they had wanted to do some live sessions. I think it's entirely possible. We do it with our artists and ourselves internally, and that's really exciting. You know, working with environment artists and then popping over to another Zoom screen and working with our cinematics teams, and, you know, kind of just getting to work with the project and work with the assets and visualize it and see changes in real time.
Another question here, somebody's asking, were you working with straight up Unreal Engine or a kind of Pixatope or Disguise type of a thing? I know that you mentioned Vanishing Point already, so maybe
Gotcha.
that.
Yeah, in this situation, especially with Vanishing Point, it's just straight up Unreal. There wasn't really a need for a package like Disguise on, at least for this workflow. We've done productions that run through Disguise, but a lot of times that's because there's a whole lot more going on behind the scenes that kind of, there's a requirement for that. But no, this was kind of very clean. And part of what's great about that is everything was obviously just recorded right into Sequencer. And so, the editor gets started with the post-viz that we recorded, and then all of the data is already on the cloud in Perforce. So, as quick as the next day, things can start to be adjusted, and it's all there. So,
Right. So using Perforce, your team in the studio, or do you have a lot of remote people working?
Yeah, no, a kind of a combination. But yeah, Perforce is, anyone who uses Perforce knows how how crucial it is, but also how painful it is.
Limitations.
Yeah.
Yes.
Integral.
But yeah,
Crucially painful. Yeah.
Crucially painful. Yes, obviously completely enables efficient remote working with large teams. So, yeah.
Do you work with cloud technology much, like virtual machines or storage in the cloud, Perforce in the cloud, any of that?
We do work, a little bit with AWS, but nothing, no like virtual boxes or anything like that, at least on this project. But as that becomes more available, I know there's a lot of new resources that are kind of designed towards studios in this kind of pipeline. We definitely keep an eye on that. So.
Okay, great. Another person asking whether you used Deadline or I guess some kind of render queue manager, or were you using single machine for your rendering?
On this project, it was just single machines. I think just based on shot count and our schedule and delivery. We've kind of got a little farm at the office here, so it was just single machines.
Okay. Is there anything more about the edit process that was different with this as opposed to doing offline rendering?
I think one notable mention is that previz was basically edited in Sequencer.
Right.
And so we would export knowing what we were, it was basically done there. I can't actually remember if we used the EDL function, which exists in Sequencer, to kind of go back and forth, which we have used now. But kind of from the get-go, that's kind of what has really enabled a lot of our cinematics artists, so that we're all on the same page, and things are, especially with a spot like this one where it's so focused on these quick moments that are intercut, having continuity like right away and not having to, wait until you're outside Unreal or having to, look at an external source to kind of to figure out that continuity. Just doing it all in Sequencer was extremely useful.
Did you then, once you had that together, render shots out individually and put them through offline editing?
Yeah. So basically things are sequenced and then rendered with handles, or there's always extra room. But yes, then it's done. I think I actually don't remember where we conformed, but there is an external offline edit.
Did you involve an editor in Unreal Engine in order to do the edit within Sequencer in previz?
Yeah.
Or did you have like an Unreal artist kind of act as an editor? You actually train an editor to use Unreal?
No, it was more the latter, and it was much more internal. I think we acted as the editors. I mean, you primarily,
Yeah.
Right.
That's a great question, because that's something we're always exploring too. And a lot of the editors we work with or even talking to, I'm always trying to pitch them Sequencer, just because it's so powerful to be able to just make changes or have an editor line something up and then the keyframes be changed for the shot without having to do anything,
Yeah. It's beautiful being able to have it all in one place and be able to, like, because you make an edit change, that triggers an animation change or something, being able to do it all in one spot.
Yeah,
Ripple.
It's hard to describe to people who don't work in Sequencer or on Unreal. It's hard to describe that capability. I've found that it's not, that it's the whole environment is there.
Right. Is there anything more you want to share on this project? We have another clip for you guys that's that some of your work with Nan, and I definitely want to show that before we wrap. But is there anything more that you wanted to share about this one before we cue that clip?
I mean, I think, I think in general, like I said, we're definitely students of the process. We're learning very much alongside everybody else as we go. I think it's doing this project definitely made us feel very, grateful for the process and for the artists that we did work with. I think, and, all the different aspects and what they contribute. I think like it was the sum of so many parts. The final piece, did require compositing, and that was a very, very valuable part to retaining some live action imperfections to the shot. But developing previz and Unreal got us to a place in which we had a finished cut within a couple weeks. I mean, it generally is just very exciting, and gives us the opportunity to work with great folks. So I think that's been one of the most compelling parts about this.
And any advice to anyone else thinking about following in your footsteps and doing a piece fully in Unreal?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, join the community, especially a community like this one. We're, especially with the boom of all this tech in the last 2 years kind of thing. It's great that everyone, it's accessible, all this stuff. So the advice is go make something. Go try something out.
Definitely pulling apart existing projects. I know that was heavily how I myself got into it. Was definitely learning backwards and then learning forwards. That was very helpful. Yeah, it's an exciting community. I mean, I feel very lucky that we're all getting to share information and learn together at the same time. So it just feels, I don't know, Ed, I think you had mentioned when we had first met, it feels like all the problems that were solved in a prior traditional means of visual effects are now being resolved by the same community at the same time. So that's really, it's an exciting place to coexist.
To play, yeah, I think it's brought fun back to visual effects again for a lot of people, and lots of innovation, and the processes that you've just explained. It's more collaborative, it's more connected. People on less headphones on and all separate and more joined together. And yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm loving it too.
Totally.
Do you want to tell us what we're about to see in this next clip?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like we mentioned, exploring every different aspect of virtual production is really exciting to us. So we did a project with Nant Studios, the volume stage here in El Segundo, and I think we are in this BTS just explaining to, I think, some of the folks that traditionally don't know as much about the virtual production space what's possible just in a very short amount of time. So it was just our way of hyping up virtual production. Yeah,
kind of a love letter to virtual production. All right, well, let's check it out.
We're here today on the stage of Nant Studios. This production marks a very fresh and novel new workflow and creative partnership that we truly believe is the future of how these things can be made. As versus fighting the elements with virtual production, you control the whole big picture. We start with building fully virtual real-time environments with lush photorealistic detail and texture. Then we photograph our talent and vehicles on real cameras, where our virtual environment will also be the light for our talent and vehicle. You can add, shape, or lose a mountain within the blink of an eye. You can go from New York to LA to Iceland all within a single shoot day. And Sunlight we can place anywhere we want. Seeing the results in real time, you're really able to expand your creative ambition. Your creative paintbrush is more infinite than ever before. It's a liberating creative experience.
It makes me want to go do virtual production for sure.
That's our hope.
That was the goal.
That's our hope, to try and convince some folks to give it a shot.
You guys are doing more in volumes now, more with LED walls as well as the green screen work.
Yeah, a little bit of both. And yeah, again, it really is determined by what the creative of the project is. For instance, we're doing a project that is very ambitious right now, but it was a live action green screen hybrid production. I think there was a demand for more final pixel high fidelity renders of the environments as versus the volume stage where you get away with a real-time environment because it's out of focus. So yeah, a little bit of both, case by case. Yeah.
I think it's an important point because I think a lot of time people think of virtual production, they think of just the LED wall, and if you're not doing that, then you're not doing virtual production. But no, you guys have highlighted that it can be entirely virtual, just within a virtual space with no green screen, or with green screen, or with LED. There's many different flavors to this. Can you give me your 2 cents on what you think virtual production means?
Well, that's a good one. I mean, it's such a tool set at its core, right? And so it's not any one thing. And I think the biggest thing is about making these creative decisions just more in the moment, and just getting away from this idea of a linear pipeline. And so for me, as a virtual production supervisor, for me, it's the key word is nonlinear with virtual production. It's a tool that leads you towards a nonlinear workflow, and away from a situation where you're taking steps, and to go backwards and forwards is a one-directional thing. Whereas Unreal Engine and the other tools that kind of fall under the umbrella of virtual production all kind of guide creators towards that idea of nonlinear filmmaking.
That's really, really useful to hear that, because I hear the kind of debate all the time about what is virtual production, and from what you guys have said, it sounds like you approach it as a creative filmmaker and an engineer in equal measure, and that you're looking at what challenge are you trying to solve and what are the right tools for that, and not trying to fit one flavor into every single project that comes in, and formularize it or make it too overly systematic. Is that fair to say?
I think so. I think that's a good point. Yeah, they're really, that's what's been fun so far, is there is no formula right now. Despite what maybe other behind the scenes on larger virtual productions that have gone on, it's still new for everyone. So yeah, I would agree.
Anywhere that people can find out more about you guys and what you do?
Yeah, we I think our website starts off, and that is impossible-objects.co. Yeah, I think Jackie, I think he shared that. That also links us to all our socials as well. Yeah, I mean, I think our email contact is there, so please get in touch, and if you guys want to connect, yeah, we're right there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, definitely, if anyone's out there wanting cool stuff and you think that you want to try it in Unreal Engine and you want to be on the cutting edge, I definitely recommend checking out Impossible Objects. I don't don't get paid anything to say that. I think they just do cool work, and that's why we wanted to have these guys on today. So thank you both for being here today. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Luke. Thank you for also pushing the edge of this way of making film and content. I think it's really important that you're pushing that edge and showing that it's possible. So thank you for doing that and showing that everybody else that it is possible and desirable. And I hope we get to have you back sometime. That's been
Yeah.
No, and thank you, Ed, and thank you, Jackie, and thank you everybody for just giving us the space to talk about it, for what you guys do, and for very much the same thing, for educating the community and helping kind of build a community. Really, that's one thing we're very eager to be a part of, is the space and community. So glad to be here.
Yeah,
we feel the same way, very much so. Yeah. Look forward to more, and keep up the great work. Thank you very much for joining us here today, and thank you also to our viewers and listeners. Appreciate you guys all tuning in and being a part of the community as well. And we will be back soon with another one of these webinars, and we'll see you all very soon. Thanks, guys.
thanks so much, Ed.
You bet.
Thanks.
Thank you.